going to go ahead and get us started. Good morning and welcome to this trade training. My name is Molly Cook with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University, and I will be helping with technology on the webinar today. Today we will be talking about eligibility, enrollment, agent/liable in the 2021 program changes. As a reminder, all participants on this call are in listen-only mode and cannot unmute themselves. If you have questions as the webinar progresses, please post your questions in the chat box and we will address those. A reminder that this webinar will be recorded. The presentation, recording, and any materials presented today will be available on Illinois WorkNet. In an effort to be as accessible as possible, this webinar will be offering closed captioning, and the recorded session will also have closed captions. At the end of the webinar, let's see here. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped to the wrong line of my notes. A reminder that if you have a faulty internet connection or would prefer to do so, you can call in using the phone number in your registration email. So with that, I want to turn it over to Sheila for today's session.
Okay, well, thanks, Molly. Thanks to the whole ISU team for helping us out, getting these presentations done and recording them and getting them on WorkNet so people can have access to them later if they need to. I want to also thank, of course, the trade unit, Crystal Bigelow, Susan Boggs, and Lori Graham for helping make our presentations the best they can be. And we want to thank WorkNet. I don't know if anybody from WorkNet's on here. David Garvey, he's been posting our materials and our videos on WorkNet for us. We appreciate that. And of course, I want to thank all of the attendees for joining us today. I know trade is such a fun topic, and I hope you're getting something out of these presentations. We've tried to make it as detailed as possible, but obviously the trade program is very intensive and we can't cover every single detail in every presentation that we do, but we do appreciate you being here. So with that, we will get started. There are some additional materials that are going to be posted on WorkNet today. I'll reference them in the presentation, but I won't be covering each of them. There will be a few of them that I will cover. Okay. Okay, so can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So today, again, we're talking about eligibility, enrollment, agent liable situations, and we're going to cover the 2021 program changes as well. So today's topics, we're going to talk about the eligibility for trade benefits and services for the workers/participants. We're going to talk about trade readjustment assistance, or TRA, which is the income support piece of it. We're going to go through the trade enrollment process, covering documentation that's needed. We're going to go through the individual employment plan, and I've got a new version of it that we're going to be putting out there that will be in effect as of today. We've made a few changes to make it easier, hopefully. We're going to cover assessments. We're going to go over the extenuating circumstances that can be used to help a participant meet an enrollment deadline if there's a reason for that. Cover co-enrollment, case management services that must be provided to trade participants, and go over a few trade services. We're going to cover liable and agent state responsibilities if you have a participant that falls within that category, and we'll discuss the 2021 program differences. So eligibility. So for participants to be eligible for trade benefits and services, they have to be a part of an affected certified worker group. And that's listed in the petition as we talked about last week. They must have a qualifying separation date that is in between the impact date and the expiration date of a trade certification. And a qualifying separation, what that means is a total or partial separation of a worker from an adversely affected employment that is within that certification period, which is that impact and expiration date. And they must be laid off due to lack of work or a plant closure. They can't be fired, they can't quit. So it has to be that's one of those specific reasons. And we've covered this before in our Trade 101, but the career planner, it is very important that they know these deadlines and timeline dates, you know, the impact date, the certification date, and expiration date. That helps determine if that participant is a part of that worker group and those deadlines of when they need to be enrolled in training or waived from the training. And what that enrollment deadline is, it's a TRA deadline. So it establishes their eligibility for TRA. And of course, again, we're going to say it over and over. It is the latter of the last day of the 26th week or the 8th week for anyone who is a 2021R participant after the week of issuance of the certification. And or it's the last date of the 26th week or the 16th week for those participants under 2021R after the worker's most recent total qualifying separation. And the deadline is 2626 for any petition that is numbered up to 97,999. The deadline of 8/16 is for any petition that is 98,000 plus. We have not had any 98,000 plus yet, but we do anticipate there being some coming up in the future because we've filed some petitions that may get certified. So here's the conclusion paragraph from the certification. So you can figure out these dates. The certification date is in the red boxes. It's the date that it is signed by the officer at the OTAA. And the impact date is always covered in this paragraph. They're partially separated from employment on or after. That's your impact date. And then it'll say through 2 years of date of certification. Generally, there are some petitions who may have something different than that, but it will specify it. But that would be your expiration date, is this in the blue box. So TRA is the income support that is paid in the form of cash payments to a trade participant. They must file a UI TRA claim with IDES when, and that's something that's covered during your rapid response activities that they should file that. The initial eligibility for TRA, it gets established at the beginning of the process. And during the whole time the person is enrolled in trade or training or whatever, they have to maintain the requirements and eligibility things that are in place throughout that entire progression through that employment plan to still be able to get that TRA. And those determinations for eligibility for TRA are made by IDES. We do not make those determinations at DCEO, and that's why they must file that claim through IDES. There's 3 types of TRA. There's basic, that's payable if the participant has been issued a waiver from the training requirement, they're enrolled in a trade approved training, or there are cases, and once they complete training, there can be a period of eligibility for TRA cash payments after they have completed that training, depending on the length of their training and what their eligibility is left for basic TRA. We don't know all of those rules, but IDES does make all those determinations, and they are the ones responsible for paying the TRA benefits to the trade workers and participants. The additional TRA, that's payable only at the point when a person has exhausted their basic TRA and they're participating in trade approved training. So it kind of follows basic. So it's right after the basic is done, but they do have to be attending training. And completion TRA, that's just the final part of it. It is for a period of up to 13 weeks during the last, during a 20-week period. And it's only payable at the point that a person needs to just kind of complete their training. They don't have any more eligibility left for basic or additional. And they also have to have met all of the required benchmarks to be eligible for that completion TRA. And there is an application that must be filed with IDES to apply for that completion TRA. So that's why the benchmarks are very important for participants, because we don't know at the beginning if someone may need to be may need to apply for this completion TRA. So be very mindful of that those benchmarks are entered in a timely manner. And we'll cover benchmarks in a couple weeks. So That's the TRA piece. So now we're going to move into the trade enrollment. So this is just some general information regarding trade enrollment. After rapid response is conducted with the trade affected workers, the career planner is going to schedule an enrollment meeting with those participants. And kind of the career planner would need to kind of look at the general eligibility requirements and kind of predetermine beforehand kind of what, if that person is eligible, check your layoff list, make sure that participant name is on there. If not, we can work with IDES to see if maybe that person's name was left off for some reason. You're going to check their layoff dates to make sure they're within that period of certification, the impact date and the expiration date, to make sure that they're eligible under that petition. You're going to check your IBIS, which is the Illinois Benefit Information System, and to verify that those participants are within that 2626 or 816 deadline. If it does appear a participant may not be within those deadlines, then the participant could need to bring additional documentation to support any kind of extenuating circumstances that may apply for that participant to meet that, to extend that deadline. Some of the documentation, the career planner will do the following. They're going to review that certification and any amendments to it to make sure that the worker is eligible under that certification and that they're within that deadline. You're going to get any kind of documentation that supports that participant's attachment to that certified worker group. You're going to confirm they're on the effective employee list. You're going to print the IBIS documentation, and the documentation that we're looking for is the TRA claim details page. That's going to show your petition number, your employer, your certification date, expiration date, impact date, last qualifying separation date, and benefit period end date. And you're going to get your UI basic claim details that reflects the lack of work as a layoff reason. And I have examples of those to show you what we're looking for. So let me go get those. So the first one I'm going to show you, and all of the pertinent information has been eliminated from this, so there is no PII on here. This is your UI basic inquiry screen, and I've highlighted kind of what you're looking for here. So here's the separation reason here: laid off due to lack of work. That's the key point on this particular document that you're going to get from IBIS. And we are asking now, one of the things we're changing is this and the TRA claim details need to be uploaded whenever you are requesting approval for the initial IEP. And the TRA claim details will also need to be uploaded for any modifications for date extensions, just so we can verify that the person has the number of weeks of TRA available to complete that training for that extension. And we'll cover a lot of that during when we talk about IEP modifications. So here is the TRA claim details form from IBIS. So the things that we're looking for here are, here is the petition number. Here is your certification date of the petition. Here is the expiration date of the petition. Here's the company name. And here's your impact date. Here's the last qualifying separation date and your benefit period end date. The benefit period end date is very important, because if someone is bumping up against that date, then we may not be able to issue a waiver if that affects. Why does it say my screen sharing is paused? Uh-oh. Can you guys see my screen?
We can see your Adobe. However, it doesn't look like, if you're moving it around, we're not seeing it. So what I would do is I would stop sharing and then reshare.
Okay, I was gonna say, because it's had a thing up here that says screen sharing is paused. So I'm like, wait a minute, what happened?
Yeah, I would stop sharing and then try to reshare it.
Must be the internet today.
Yeah, sometimes there's, we love the technology, and then sometimes it has a mind of its own.
Yes, it does.
Okay, we see it a lot clearer now. There you go, and we see you scrolling.
That's good. Okay, so here again is the petition number. You got your certification date, expiration date, the employer, the impact date, last qualifying separation, and your benefit period end date. This is critical because we had a situation where we weren't able to issue a waiver for someone because they were bumping up against their benefit period end date. So that, be very mindful of that. And these dates here, that are on here in the petition number, these particular dates that we have highlighted here, all of those should be listed. The benefit period end date, I don't believe it is not listed on the TAA additional info screen, but please be mindful that these dates that are listed on this particular document for this participant, they must match what is on that TAA additional info screen. If they do not, then you need to work with IDES and your rapid response person for your area to ensure that IDES has this information accurate in their system, and that the Illinois Employment Business System, EBS, hope I named that right, is correct. Because sometimes we have run into some issues where something isn't correct in one of those systems, but make sure that those dates are correct and they match on that TA additional info screen. So that's your TRA claim details. Was there any questions on that one? I can't see the chat right now.
I do not see any questions.
Okay, all right. So that's the two important documents from IBIZ that the career planner needs to make sure is in the file and review those. You're going to document any labor market information for that trade impacted job for that participant, and collect any kind of necessary WIOA documents that are needed for co-enrollment, which is mainly the selective service requirement documentation for a participant for males that were born prior to January 1st of 1960. Anybody from January 1st of 1960 or later, that's who needs that documentation for the selective service. So some of the things the participant's going to provide are documentation of U.S. citizenship. That can be like a birth certificate or U.S. passport, a marriage license if there's a proof of name change needed, your photo ID, social security card. For veterans, you'll need a DD-2. I'm not sharing that, am I?
No.
Sorry. So here's the documentation for the participant they'll need to provide. The selective service record for men born January 1st, 1960 or after. And if they have the trade company layoff letter, that's always a good thing to provide as well. Just be mindful that sometimes the dates on those layoff letters may not match up to what's in IBIZ for the layoff dates. Things change from when they issue those letters until things actually happen sometimes. If the person is not a U.S. citizen, then they will need some sort of a documentation that shows they are authorized to work in the United States. They're not entitled to benefits or services if they cannot document this. And
Sheila?
Yeah.
We're only seeing your home screen. We're not seeing any documents.
Really? What is going on? I'm sorry. I must be challenged by technology today.
It's a rainy, gloomy day. No worries.
I know it is. Okay, how about now?
There we go.
Yay!
PowerPoint.
Okay, so I finally figured out technology today.
We also have someone with their hand up. Sheila, Dana has their hand up.
Okay, so can we unmute
Can
Dana?
I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, my question, excuse me, is I have a person that was working in Indiana, working in Indiana, live in Illinois, and she filed her claim in Indiana. And you were saying IDES, that's not Indiana. So does that make a difference?
Well,
When it comes,
if you can get documentation from that other state, we're going to cover the agent liable responsibilities later in this presentation, because that's a situation where it's an agent liable customer. They're seeking services in Illinois. but the TRA claim is established in Indiana.
Right, because she lives in Illinois, but she worked in Indiana.
Right. And Indiana is the liable state because they will be responsible for paying the UI for that person. And if they're seeking services in Illinois, so that is an agent liable situation. You know, obviously they're not going to be in IDES's system, so you won't be able to get that documentation. But we as the agent state will have to work with the liable state, which is Indiana, in that situation to get the documentation that we need to do our process and approvals here. And we won't have that documentation from IDES, obviously, but Indiana would have to get something like that to verify all of that. But we'll cover the responsibilities for the two states later in the presentation for a situation like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So if they're not a U.S. citizen and they have no documentation of authorization to work, obviously they're not entitled to the benefits. And if the authorization to work is going to expire, say it's going to expire in May of 2022, services cannot continue after that expiration, and we would not be able to approve any training that extends after that expiration date at this point. That the authorization to work and all of that, their expiration date, that you can verify that through this SAVE system. That's the U.S. Customs and Immigration System. And as they go through the process, that immigration status must be re-verified if that documentation for authorization to work will expire during the period when they're potentially eligible for services and training. So just keep that in mind if you do run across that situation. The career planner should validate all the documents that the participant provides to them, make sure they're authentic, whatever, you copy them and place them in that participant file. There is a document that will be posted later, if it's not posted already under this. They're out of work that it's a WIOA Title I eligibility documentation sources. It will give you specific information on each of the types of eligibility documentation that's required under WIOA, which, we under trade accept a lot of the same documentation because they're co-enrolled, but that will give you a lot of the sources that you can get for those particular things that must to meet the eligibility requirements. I'm not going to go through that document because we don't have the time today, but just know that it's out there as a resource for you. So the individual employment plan is the main document for a participant in trade. It outlines a lot of the things related to their reemployment plan and their work history and all of that information. They have to be made available to the participants under the trade program per 20 CFR 618-350. And you need to the career planner must make the participant aware of the advantages of that IEP. Some of the advantages are it helps to identify any transferable skills that the participant has, any barriers to employment. It'll identify their work history, education history, their occupational goal. It's going to help determine the services that they need to progress through their reemployment plan. And it's going to show all the responsibilities that they need to meet during this reemployment plan. The participant can refuse to complete it. However, if they do, that could result in a denial of some benefits and services because there's portions that are needed to determine eligibility for things like job search allowance or training. So they need to know that, like if they're going to refuse to do it. I don't know that we've ever had anyone refuse to do it at this point, but I'm not a case manager, so I don't know. And a participant is issued only one IEP. For their progression through the thing, so you don't need to do more than one. They can be developed by a partner program if someone does seek service from a partner program and they fill out an individual employment plan for them. Then you can accept it. However, it does need to contain the required components for trade, and if it doesn't, then you can supplement that IEP developed by the partner program and use the one that's supplemented. The career planner has to monitor the progress of the participant in meeting all the requirements and responsibilities that are listed in the IEP. Some of those things that are very important are the attendance and the achievement in the training program. You know, are they getting good grades? They're passing their classes. They're, you know, they're progressing through it as they're supposed to. The IEP has to be modified when there's any changes that occur in that reemployment plan. Some changes that can occur are changes in costs, you know, increase or decrease. That could be tuition. It could be, you know, now they're traveling to a site, they're going to get mileage. If there's a change in the training program, say, you know, some classes are not going to be offered now. They've changed them to different classes that they've required as part of the degree program, or, you know, now they need an additional class, whatever kind of things that are needed to complete that training program. They're going to get supplemental assistance now, either travel or subsistence payments, or they're not going to get them anymore. So those are changes that do require modifications. The modification details for an IEP mod must be recorded in both the IEP status record and in the comment box, and also in case notes. So keep that in mind. The comment box does not have to be extensively detailed. It does need to provide a little description about it. It is a limited box. It has only so many characters. There's a lot of characters available, but we have run into situations where people put the whole detail of all of the whole, everything related to, you know, the modification or the initial IEP, and they have run into a situation where they ran out of room and they needed to do a mod. So we had to delete some of the information. So just keep in mind, you know, you can reference the case note date for the information if you have to, just to save some space. Modification of the IEP does require the approval by state merit staff. So keep that in mind. If there's any changes that modifies that employment plan. And the IEP uses the results of the initial and comprehensive specialized assessments as a part of the whole process. And what that does is they're going to document a strategy that helps provide that participant to determine what services are needed so they can obtain reemployment. You know, the IEP is going to have their employment goals, the targeted occupation and industry, what training program they want to enroll in, if any, and any services such as career services, supportive services, post-training case management, supplemental assistance, which is basically transportation and subsistence or subsistence, and participants' responsibilities under this plan. There are 8 required trade case management services, and that is per 20 CFR 618-310. All 8 of them have to be discussed with the participant and offered to them. They do not have to be provided specifically by the LWIA, but they do have to be offered. If they're offered, then the date the service was offered is entered on the IEP. The date, if it's provided, the date must be entered, and you know, obviously the date they were offered has to be on the IEP as well. And if you refer the participant to a partner program to provide a service, then the referral date is the one that is entered as the date offered, because they can get these services from partner programs. It is not something that is required to be provided by the local areas. So here are the 8 required case management services. When we go through the IEP in a minute, we'll look at those. But these are all on the IEP, like on page, I think it's on page 1. So these, you know, they're comprehensive specialized assessment, development of IEP, training available, financial aid information, short-term pre-vocational services, counsel, individual group counseling, employment statistics information, and supportive services. The participants must also register with Illinois JobLink and Illinois WorkNet, and those are at the very top of that list of 8 case management. They're right above those 8 case management services on that IEP. So I'm going to walk through this IEP document to show you the new version as soon as I can get my mouse to work. Okay, does everybody see the IEP? No, it says,
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, why does it say it's paused? Let me try this again. Keep getting a message that says it's paused. Okay, so this is gonna be the new version of the IEP. However, the version that you'll fill in is not going to contain all of these instructions that are listed below each section. But I just put this together. This will be posted on WorkNet hopefully later today. I went through and separated each section and just provided some instructions and information about it. Maybe it'll help people. But the participant information is pretty basic. The LE, what LE are you with? Their last four, their social. What date is this IEP being created? The participant information, their name, address, phone numbers, email. The next section is the petition number and the name of the worker group. So, the petition number goes in this box, of course. The one they're being served under, what is the name of their worker group that they were a part of. Your participant employment status. Okay, so you're going to select one of them. They're laid off and have a qualifying separation date. And what is that qualifying separation date? They're partially separated. What is their partial separation date? Or are they currently employed, but they're threatened with layoff? And if they're threatened with layoff, what is their projected layoff date? So you would select one of these three and then put the date in that particular box. So this is a new field here, this veterans priority of service. If you do have someone come in who meets the veterans priority of service, you're just going to mark yes. If they don't meet the priority, if they're not a veteran, so they don't meet the priority of service, you're going to mark no. But that is a new field to this form, so please be mindful of that. Now here's where the employment and case management services are. Here's the registration for JobLink and WorkNet. So what date did they register? Your comprehensive and specialized assessment. You have to put a date offered on this line, and you need a date offered on these other two lines as well. So there are 3 lines that relate to the comprehensive and specialized assessment. Okay, so just keep that in mind. We have seen it where people have entered these 2 dates here, but they don't put one up here. You need one up here as well. The development of the IEP, you're doing it, so you would have a date offered and date provided. So that's part of the process that you're doing here. And here's the note about they can decline the development. However, some trade benefits require completion of an IEP. So it's just a little note to keep that in mind as you're going through this with them. Information on training available. So your date offered, date provided, financial aid information, same thing. All of these must have a date offered. They do not have to all have a date provided, but they must have a date offered. So just make sure the date offered is completed on those boxes. And then transferable skills checklist. There is a transferable skills checklist that we can also place out there as well. That we have developed that kind of ties into how this is set up. Like there's a whole list there's a communication skills and a list under communication skills, financial management, research planning. So any of those that would fit for that person, we recommend you use it because it does tie with these categories listed here. And mark any of them that are applicable for that person. And mark the other if there's any other ones and list specifically what those are. And then obviously, you want to put that in the participant file and you'll mark this box when you do that. And I will add the transferable skills checklist to the documents that get posted later today. Barriers to employment. If this participant is enrolling in a training program, then you should have something filled out in this section. Because if you don't, then why are we putting them in training? They obviously have a barrier to employment if we're enrolling them in training. So make sure that this is completed for anyone you're enrolling in training. If they're going into RTAA, we would not expect to see anything in this box because they have obviously obtained employment because they're getting RTAA, they've got a job. So just keep that in mind. If they're going to be referred for partner referrals, like, Title I WIOA. So if they're getting co-enrolled, then you would obviously mark Title I WIOA, and the participant has to agree to the referrals, yes or no. If they're being referred to any of these other ones, then obviously mark those. If there's any other programs we have not listed, mark the other box and complete, fill in the information about what program you're referring them to, if there are any that are not listed. So just make sure, keep that in mind about the barriers to employment. Prior work history, you want fill this out as completely as possible for the last employment job, which is more than likely the trade job. There's room for 3 here. If you need space to add more, you can always attach them on a separate sheet of paper, separate page attached to the IEP. But just make sure that you fill this out as completely as possible, including this description of the job duties, as much information as you have. The education history, what did they complete high school? Yes. Okay. If they did, then you just put the year of graduation. You don't have to put the GED information in here or anything like that. If they didn't complete high school, that they have a GED, fill this in, or the highest grade completed if there's no high school diploma or GED, fill that in. If they've attended college, business, trade schools, they have a professional technical license, fill out all of this information that is applicable to the participant as much as you can, as much information as you have from them. So this is where we get into the assessment, which is where we were getting ready to start. So there's an initial assessment. So from the initial assessment, it was administered by a partner program and contains all the required components listed below. Here are the components that it has to have. Initial assessment was administered by a partner program but did not contain the required components. The assessment's been supplemented by the local area to ensure it has the required components. Okay, great. Or the initial assessment was administered by the trade program and contains all the required components listed below. So the components are, they've been provided with information on the prevailing local labor market conditions, okay? Participants' knowledge, skills, and abilities from the education or previous employment have been assessed. The transferable skills that the participant possesses may be interest to local employers, they've identified those. The participant skill levels, including literacy, numeracy, English language proficiency, aptitudes, abilities, including any skills gaps, and supportive service needs have been evaluated. Or the participant's barriers to reemployment have been identified. So here's some examples of barriers to employment: lack of applicability of skills from workers' present occupation to other occupations, skills are in excess supply in the labor market area, or other barriers as outlined in WIOA section 324. So those are the components that must be in the IEP for the participant. So keep that in mind. This is the initial assessment. Only check one that's applicable for that participant. Am I going along right here? I'll see 5. Okay, so the next part is one of the sections that has it's been kind of confusing to people because we had this as 2 or 3 different sections. We've combined it all as one section now, so keep in mind this has changed. It's the determination of services. So now we're having you select one of the reasons here instead of having each one as a separate one. So you will select either that suitable employment is available to the participant would benefit from additional employment and case management services. Or you're going to select no suitable employment is available to the participant would benefit from additional employment and case management services. Or it has been determined no suitable employment is available even with additional employment and case management services. The participant has been advised to apply for training. So only select one of those as applicable to that participant. Now, the participant needs to agree with the assessment outcome. So yes or no, they have to put their initials. If they answer no, then we must have a reason as to why they say no. And any assessments, comprehensive and specialized assessments that are completed with that participant, your TAVE 1112, CASAS, Work Keys, Career Scope, CIS, if there's any other ones that you conduct with that participant, then mark the other box and list what that assessment is. So we've simplified this hopefully for you because it was very confusing. People were marking one of the boxes here, one of the things, and then they were filling out all this information in every one of them. So we have simplified it to one section. And then the results recorded in IWDS, the hard copy assessments are in the participant file. So when that's complete, mark that box. The participant occupational goal. So you're going to put their targeted occupation, their industry, what's the ONET percentage growth, what's the projected wage per hour for that job, that occupational goal. The LMI, does it verify that there's employment in the participant's demographic area? The targeted occupation and industry, is it going to lead to suitable and sustainable employment? Yes or no? And then the statement of the occupational goal. Okay, so the person is going to successfully obtain suitable and sustainable employment with new or upgraded skills acquired from completion of a training program. You're going to select one of these, or successfully obtain suitable and sustainable employment in the same similar occupational field with current transferable skills and education. Or they're going to successfully obtain suitable and sustainable employment in a different occupational field with current transferable skills and education. Which one is applicable to this participant? And in our instructions for the IEP that we had as a separate document, there was a whole set of instructions on how to find industries, the ONET percentage growth, and all of that. And I have put all of that information in here. I just brought it over, so I hope it's helpful. If someone finds that one of these steps is not the same today, then please let us know and we can update this document as we need to. So now we get into the trade services. So when you're looking at what services under trade does this participant need, you're going to mark each service that they're going to be enrolled in at the time that you are doing this IEP. If later down the road, say someone, say they get a waiver, okay, great. You know, trade case management should always be marked for any participant being served by petitions 97, 999 and below. You will not mark this for anybody who is a petition 98,000 plus, because we cannot do trade case management for those participants under 2021R, which are the 98,000 plus petitions. So that one should always be marked depending on the petition number. If they're getting a waiver right now, that's what you're doing, you're doing a waiver, then we would expect to see, potentially trade case management or waiver marked at this time. You think they're going to go on training later and they're probably going to be eligible for transportation. You do not mark this box until you actually enroll them in training later. You will come back and you will complete this section and mark the transportation. And then when you get into the training, then you'll mark the appropriate training down here. So only do this for what you're submitting it for now. Later, if you do enroll them in one of these additional services, you will come back, complete this section at that time and submit that as a part of the modification process. So if they're training, so you have to assess their financial resources. You may mark all these boxes, you may mark only a couple of these boxes. So they're eligible and they'll receive UITRA benefits that'll cover the training period. They're not eligible for UITRA benefits, but they've provided documentation demonstrating that they have the financial stability to complete that training program. They're eligible for and will receive financial aid. They've completed a monthly budget and expense form, and they attest to those adequate financial resources are available while they're attending that training program, and that monthly budget expense form has been placed in that file. So fill out all of these that are applicable and have them initial this. Then you have your statement of your training goal. If they're going into training, here's my training goal. I want to successfully complete this, yes, and then list the training program that they're being enrolled in. So trade training. On this trade training section, you will only mark the appropriate training that they are being enrolled in. So if it's occupational vocational, you'll mark this box. You're going to put the training provider name, the program name, what is their start date and their planned end date, and what is the total weeks of that training program. If they're going into remedial, prerequisite, OJT, customized, prerequisite, pre-apprenticeship, apprenticeship, short-term pre-vocational, or any other training, you will mark the appropriate box and fill that whole section in with the relevant information that are listed. For remedial, list the courses that are remedial. For prerequisite, list the prerequisite courses. And prerequisite training in trade is not taking biology 101 before you take biology 201. Prerequisite training in trade means that you have to have a series of courses taken before you can be accepted into the program that you're trying to get into. So the best example we can think of is nursing. They have to follow a set course of training prior to being accepted into an RN program. So that's the best example of prerequisite training that we can provide for trade. But just keep that in mind. Some of the training institutions get a little confused by that when they're filling out the Form 6. And we've tried to clarify the Form 6 to clear that up. So just be mindful of that. Only mark the ones that you're enrolling them in at this time. If later down the road something happens and you find that they need to enroll in a remedial training for whatever reason, or a prerequisite, then you could come back and you would fill this section out for that particular training that you're enrolling them in at that time as a part of that modification, and you would submit this part with the modification request. We have had people mark all these boxes and they're only enrolling them in occupational vocational training. Just only mark the ones that they are enrolling in at this time. So then you're going to fill out your total number of training weeks for each particular type of training, and then your total right here. It's based on the boxes that you fill out up above. And your total cost of the trade training. This is only the trade cost. If there's anything being paid by WIOA, do not include it here. You're gonna put your tuition and fees, your transportation or subsistence, any required books, equipment, supplies, and consumables here. If there's any testing and certifications, put that here. You also need to include the testing and certification information as a part of your 6 conditions of training case note so that we're aware of those. If you don't know the exact cost, you can just put that there is a test, and, if you can estimate a cost of that testing or certification, and then you're going to put a total right here. So then we get into our 6 conditions of training. So there's 6 criteria. They're listed here. And you have to have questions answered in the case note regarding each criteria. So mark, if you've answered it, then mark yes. What is the industry recognized credential that is going to be completed as a result of this training? List it. If there's not a recognized credential in here, just put, not applicable, or just tell us that, there is no credential issued by this training. And then have all the criteria been met and documented in a case note and IWDS, and you have a printout of that case note that you're going to attach to this IEP in the participant file, yes or no. And I've listed the specific condition of training here, and we have listed the questions that must be answered as a part of that case note when you're submitting for approval of that training. So be mindful of this. These questions have changed based on the new trade final rule that was issued. So you need to carefully look at these and make sure that you answer these questions as a part of that case note. And basically the questions follow along with what that criterion asks for. The next section is participant agreement for co-enrollment into WIOA services. Does the participant meet the eligibility requirements for WIOA? Yes or no? If no, then provide the reason that they're not eligible for the WIOA services. So either they're not registered with selective service, or if there's another reason, mark the other box and list what that reason is. Then you have the agreement. Does the participant agree to be co-enrolled in WIOA? Yes or no? If no, provide a reason. And if it's no, they should sign this waiver of option to co-enroll in WIOA. If they are being co-enrolled into WIOA, do not have them sign this this waiver. We have had it where people, yes, they're in WIOA, they agree to it, and then the participant signs this. you cannot waive the option to co-enroll and be co-enrolled. So make sure that this is not signed if they're going to be co-enrolled. Just keep that in mind. So when you co-enroll them in WIOA, there can be services that they can receive under WIOA that are not eligible to be paid for under trade. For all co-enrolled participants, we expect to see the career planning. It's career planning / case management now on WIOA. We will fix this before we put that document out there. Put the date offered and what the service start date is in the IWDS for that particular service. Other supportive services. So if there's supportive services like child independent care, car repairs, things that WIOA can't pay for, like the first 10 miles of transportation for participants, you can mark this other supportive services, date offered, what's the service start date in WIOA. If you are not enrolling them in these services, do not mark this box. If you're going to enroll them in follow-up services later, you can come back and fill this in later. But if at the beginning, you're not going to be enrolling them in follow-up services. So, don't mark it if you're not enrolling them in that WIOA service at this time. And then we get into the participant responsibilities. There are a set of general responsibilities that must be completed by all participants. So they have to initial and date that they agree to maintain the monthly contact while they're enrolled in trade services or co-enrolled services, report any changes regarding their personal information, their name, address, phone numbers, whatever. And they agree to actively participate in developing this reemployment plan. This should not just be handed to them to fill in any information. You should walk through this with them and fill this out while they're sitting there with you. I know it's very lengthy, but this is supposed to be in a combined effort between the career planner and the participant. So waiver responsibilities. This section is only completed if the participant was issued a waiver from the training requirement. If they don't have a waiver, then there is no need for them to initial and date this. If they're enrolling in training, then this is the section you need to have them complete. If they're not enrolling in training, there's no reason for them to sign off on this. So just keep that in mind, that the responsibilities need to be completed. The first one, the general one, is everybody. Waiver is only if they're getting a waiver, and training is only if the participant is enrolling in training. The next section is for breaks in training. If you know of any breaks in training that are 30 days or more that are going to occur during their participation, then you would mark yes and put those dates, they begin and end, and the number of days, because that is very important, because TRA is not payable for any break in training more than 30 days. That's 30 days or more. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes you may not know that those breaks in training are happening. So, you could mark it no at this point if you don't know of any. The next section is on the training benchmarks. If the person is enrolling in training, then the participant needs to be made aware of all of this here, and they must agree to this and put their initials. So they have to agree to provide information at least every 60 days, which they provide the biweekly attendance every 2 weeks. So they should be meeting this. And then you've got your approval of the plan. There's the appeal rights are here for the participant. We have these on most of our documents that require a determination. Here's an attestation statement, the participant is signing, saying yes, they agree with this assessment, the enrollment in the services and benefits that are listed, and and they're going to be bound by those responsibilities that they've signed off on. And then the affidavit by the career planner, they certify that information to be correct as best of their knowledge, approval or denial. Some people mark the approved before state merit staff approve it, some mark it after. Just make sure that does get marked, whichever time you do it. So if it's not marked when we review the IEP, we'll try to remind you to say, hey, make sure you mark that approved on the document. And if you have any additional comments related to the IEP, you put them here. So I hope this document's helpful. I hope the instructions help under each section. We will post this out there on our WorkNet along with our training materials. So let's go back and let me share back to my presentation. Okay, so assessments. We kind of walked through that. You know, your assessments, they are required by trade regulations at 20 CFR 618-330. And basically what it does, it forms the basis for determining what program services and benefits that participant needs to successfully obtain reemployment. So that's kind of the basis for assessments. There's an initial assessment. It should be scheduled with enough time for that participant to, look at their options, request enrollment and training if they want, or be issued a waiver from the training requirement to preserve that eligibility for TRA. They should be administered with the cooperation of the participant, and they should include the participant's interests, skills, aptitudes, and abilities. You must document the results in the case file and in case notes. And if there's any assessment that is administered by a partner program, like we said, you have to make sure that it contains required trade components. And here are the references for initial assessment if you want to look them up, and also for the comprehensive and specialized assessment. And assessments that do not contain all the trade components must be supplemented by the local area to make sure that they're in compliance with the regulations. Here's some things to consider when you're doing an initial assessment. What's the local labor market conditions, the participant's knowledge, skills, abilities from education or previous employment, any transferable skills that they have. Evaluation of their skill levels, that's done through your testing. There's basic skills test scores that can be 1 year or less. You can't be more than 1 year ago that they took them. If the reading, math, or English test scores are deficient, then that may trigger, indicate that they may need remedial training. That you can put it in conjunction with your occupational training. Some of your training institutions will let you know that those people need remedial training based on their acceptance into the program. If the participant's primary language is other than English, then English language acquisition may also be a necessary component to their training program. And any barriers that they have that, to reemployment, need to be considered as a part of the assessment and put on the IEP. So when you get that information from the initial assessment, then you can determine whether there's suitable employment available to them in the area, or what kind of employment and case management services need to be provided to them to help them. If the participant does disagree with that determination of the initial assessment, then you have to make available the comprehensive and specialized assessment to get additional information to help them determine what they want to do. If you determine no suitable employment is available, then you can make the available services described in 618-310 available. So this just kind of outlines what is in that. And then here's the reference for the specialized and comprehensive assessment. If the career planner does determine that suitable employment is not available and that they need to apply for training, then the training plan itself must consider the allowable training weeks that are available, which is 130 under trade, 156 if they're under the 2009 program. And it has to include all the training that's necessary for that participant to secure that suitable employment of a long-term duration. So keep that in mind when you're working through the training plan for a participant. And the comprehensive and specialized assessments, they have to be made available to all the participants. You have to take into account their goals, interests, for the employment opportunities that they want to pursue, or in that area of relocation where they want to go to. And basically the comprehensive specialized assessments, it expands upon the initial assessment. It's just going to go further into their interests, their skills, their abilities. It's going to include the diagnostic testing tools and instruments, your in-depth interviewing. You're going to look more into the barriers to employment and look at employment goals that they have. They can use information from the comprehensive and specialized assessments and the initial assessment, and that helps determine if that person has met those 6 criteria for approval of training. Now, the participant may be asked, if the local area does this, to take that Illinois WorkNet Skills and Interest Profiler, an ONET Interest Profiler, a Career Scope, or Career One-Stop Skills Assessment to help them make a more informed career training choice. That's a local area decision. So the next part of the trade enrollment is the application and the testing. We've kind of covered a little bit of the testing, but the career planner is going to help the person complete some of the following tasks. So ensure the benefits, rights, and obligations, BRO, has been presented and signed. That is generally done at the trade rapid response events. But if they did not attend one of those events, then the career planner may need to go through this document with them and have them sign it. You're going to ensure for 2002 and 2021 R participants that Form 004, the trade bona fide application, is completed and signed. That preserves their eligibility for the additional TRA. Completion, you're going to complete the WIOA TAA guided application in IWDS, or they're going to do the paper copy. If the paper copy is done, then you still have to do the guided application in IWDS. Just keep that in mind. They're going to sign local release of information documents that the local area has, and you're going to complete your basic skills testing. And here's, like, you know, there's a test of the TABE 11-12. There's also CASAS goals, reading and math, that can be used. For those that English language learners, there's BEST literacy, BEST plus 2.0, or CASAS life and work reading assessments. So those are some things you can use for those particular participants who English is not their primary language. If you need more information on the deficiency assessment, basic skills deficiency assessment requirements, there is a document we are going to put on with this presentation. It's the WIOA policy 5.9 basic skills deficiency assessment requirements document. So you'll see that out there later. You're going to complete a full assessment of that participant's skills and abilities, and you're going to start working on completing that individual employment plan, and review and file all eligibility documentation. If a person needs an extenuating circumstance to extend their deadline, so these are only available and can be used when the 2626 or the 816 for 2021 are people, if that deadline was missed through no fault of the participant. You got to document it. These should be very rare cases, and it's handled on a case-by-case basis based on that participant's circumstances. So you got to consider the circumstances in a specific order based on the trade program year that the participant is eligible under. And so we have a chart here. So for the 2002 law, you would start with the 45-day extenuating circumstance and see if that's applicable. If not, then you can use equitable tolling. These are the only two available under this law. Under 2009, you have the 45 days, you have 60 days upon proper notification. Under 2009, there's also state good cause and equitable tolling. Equitable tolling is available under all of them, and so is 45 days. But you have to do them in this order. So 45 days, 60 days, state good cause, equitable tolling. For 2011, you have 45 days, you have federal good cause, and then equitable tolling. 2015 is 45 days, which is basically the law that we're operating under at this point for any participants that are petitions 81,000 and 97,999. This is the bulk of who we see right now. 45 days, 60 days, federal good cause, or equitable tolling. Under 2021R for petitions 98,000 and above, you only have 45 days and equitable tolling available. So the extenuating circumstances are, if there's some sort of circumstance that justifies the extension for 45 days, the participant acted diligently, but they couldn't enroll because of some sort of exigent circumstance, we can't extend it for the 40, we can do a 45-day extension. State good cause only applies to 2009 trade law. The worker was unaware of his rights under the act, the failure by the state or employer to discharge its responsibilities or obligations under the act, any act by the employer in coercing, warning, or instructing the worker not to pursue his or her benefits or rights, or if there was another circumstance beyond the worker's control. 60-day proper notification exception. if the state's failure to provide the participant with timely information regarding the applicable training enrollment deadline, you can issue, we can use the 60-day proper notification. That a lot of times is used if for some reason they didn't get their notification from IDES, their letter that says they may be eligible. That's the one we see most often where this is used. Federal good cause. When you use federal good cause, you need to determine which factor applies here. There's 7 of them. The state failed to provide timely notice of the need to act before the deadline passed. Factors outside the control of the worker prevented the worker from taking timely action to meet the deadline. Worker attempted to seek an extension of time by promptly notifying the state. The worker was physically unable to take timely action to meet the deadline. The employer warned, instructed, threatened, or coerced the worker in any way that prevented the worker's timely filing of an application for TRA or enrolling in training. The state failed to perform its affirmative duty to provide advice reasonably necessary for the protection of the worker's entitlement to TRA, and or here's another, the last one is other compelling reasons or circumstances that would prevent a reasonable person from meeting a deadline. If you use this one, you must identify in your case note which of the 7 you are using to invoke this extenuating circumstance, and provide a justification for using the particular one you've chosen. What is the documentation that supports using that one? There is also equitable tolling. This applies to all trade laws. And the regulations say that a trade program deadline must be equitably told, equitably told when an extraordinary circumstance prevented an individual's timely action, the individual otherwise acted with diligence, when an individual fails to take timely action because the state failed to give notice required under this part. That failure is prima facie, I guess it is, evidence of an extraordinary circumstance. If the individual did not receive the required notice, but otherwise received actual notice with sufficient time to take timely action, the last of receipt of the required notice is not evidence of an extraordinary circumstances. A trade program deadline equitably told under this section is told for the time period during which the extraordinary circumstance exists. Once that circumstance is resolved, the time period that was told begins to run again. Equitable tolling may extend an otherwise expired trade program deadline by no more than 36 months or 3 years. So equitable tolling, if you use that, then you must provide a justification for using that. Usually this is when things are done after the fact. If you're requesting approval after the fact, after the deadline's passed, or you want a date extension after the training program has a planned end date in the system and that date has passed, then you would use equitable tolling to extend it. Try not to use this if at all possible, but sometimes it is necessary. DOL does not like us to use this, but if it has to happen, it should. We'll have to use it. But try to make sure that you are on top of those dates, those ending dates for people, and make sure you ask for date extensions as necessary before that date ends and get approval before it ends. Don't send it the last day at 4 o'clock when it ends, because that does not give us time to review it to approve it. So co-enrollment for trade participants is required now. It is mandated by the new trade rules. We in Illinois have been doing it for several years now. It is co-enrollment in WIO dislocated worker generally, or any other partner programs that are required to help that participant become suitably reemployed. The eligibility criteria for dislocated workers are defined at WIO section 315. Selective service registration requirement is one of the main requirements of co-enrollment, and there can be an exemption for those who do not meet the requirement. They moved here, after they were 26 or older before they moved here or something. They didn't know they had to register when they moved here. They migrated here from another country or something. But there are exemptions available for those who do not meet. Co-enrollment does allow for coordination of services and benefits and training for that participant. There are some supportive services and things that WIO can pay for, but they're not payable under trade. So that's why we like to co-enroll people, so we can give them as much benefit and opportunity that they can get. They can decline co-enrollment in WIOA, and that's where that waiver, that option to decline co-enrollment is on the IEP. We cannot, no participant can be denied benefits or services under trade based on either their ineligibility for WIOA or their declining of co-enrollment in WIOA. So keep that in mind. WIOA does provide the follow-up services under the dislocated worker program for any participant that is placed in unsubsidized employment, and that is for up to 12 months after the first date of the employment. The WIOA Title 1B service matrix will be also placed out there as well. I think that is updated and available now, but I will make a note to add that to the documents that get uploaded. So all participants must have a completed application, and that is the WIOA TAA guided application in IWDS. You need to print that, sign it, date it, and place it in the participant file. If they do fill out this paper form number 2, the trade WIOA standard application, you still have to do the guided application in IWDS to get everything in the system so we can so it's all in our electronic case management system. So some of the things we just wanted to highlight when you're completing the guided application in IWDS, the trade impacted job itself should be the only one that is marked as yes for dislocation, and that's right here. And this is just from one of a customer that's in the system. You know, their Jernberg was their employer, these are their employer dates, but this, if there was another job listed, then the other one should be listed as no. So just mark the trade job only as the one that's dislocation. They may have been dislocated from another job, but when you're doing this application for a trade person, you know, make sure that that is the trade job is the only one marked as dislocation. That is for data validation reasons. It messes with things when they do data validation. Do well. The employment history for the trade job must have all the fields completed, and specifically I've highlighted a couple of them that, you know, we definitely want to make sure are completed. Rapid response services, yes or no. It should always be yes, because whenever you present that BRO to that participant, whether that's at a trade rapid response event or if it's a one-on-one, that is providing rapid response services, because you're making them aware of the services and benefits that are available to them now, you know, because of their dislocation. So it's right here, I've highlighted in red. So yes, and the last date the participant received those rapid response services. So that is this date right here. The TAA additional info screen is very important. You must verify these specific dates that match the Illinois Business Information System. The petition number, which is right here, your certification decision date, your petition impact date, your expiration date. You know, was rapid response provided? Yes, that should always be yes. And the actual or expected separation date is right here for that participant. That's their layoff date, qualifying separation date. The dates for the petition number, certification decision date, petition impact date, expiration date, all autofill from Illinois Employment Business System, or EBS as we call it. The actual or expected separation date is entered by the career planner, but when you do enter that date, make sure that matches what is in IBIS before you like save all of this data. So just verify these dates are correct, okay? All other fields need to be verified and entered by the career planner. You know, the state funding TA training, Illinois responsible for UITRA benefits, petition from another state. So yeah, just make sure you verify these dates before you hit that save. Make sure it all matches IBIS and EBS and the information that you have. Verify your test scores and your dates in IWDS, match the official test documents. We find a lot of times test dates don't match, or these, you know, these score information sometimes doesn't match. Just verify that, please, before you finalize that entry. Case management services are required. They're entered in IWDS and the WIOA trade application, WIOA and trade applications. And it's based on the certification of that petition, the petition that the participant is served under. So for participants covered by certifications numbered up to 97,999, on the trade application, you're going to add a trade case management service record. You're going to add episodes to the services as appropriate. So anytime you're providing a case management service, you're going to add a new episode to that. Don't add a new trade case management service record. Just go into the one that you have added, and you're going to add another episode. On the WIOA application, it's a little more tricky, but for participants that receive this career planning case management service that's funded by WIOA, then you're going to continue to enter those episodes as they occur as you're providing a case management service. Okay. Let's get something now. Okay. But you're not going to add the career planning episodes on the WIOA application if that person is getting the case management services funded by trade. So keep that in mind. The people who are getting funded by the trade case management are those that are being served by petition numbers up to 97,999. So under WIOA, they're going to have this career planning case management service record, but you're not going to add episodes to that at this point. You're going to just initially establish it, and then you're going to do it on the trade side for those participants. Any additional services that might be being provided by WIOA, then you would update that. You know, if they're getting some, and you're going to add those services into WIOA, you know, travel reimbursement from WIOA, childcare, you would add a new episode to this career planning case management if the service is being provided by WIOA. Any new participants for trade or WIOA that are co-enrolled, you're going to enter the new career planning case management service at the beginning upon initial application entry. You'll add the career planning episodes of case management as necessary if they receive any of these services under WIOA, but you won't do the case management for them. So just keep in mind, it's based on the petition numbers. So, and we'll go back to the slide. So any petition 97,999 or below, this is the process for all of these. And the reason is because trade funds can't be used for participants covered on under certifications that are number 98,000 and above. That is because of the new 2021 R rules. So if you have someone who is being served under petition number 98,000 plus, then under TAA application, you're not going to enter any trade case management services. On the WIOA application, you'll have the career planning case management service record upon the initial application entry, and you will add episodes to that as you provide case management services to that participant, even as they occur under the trade side of things. So keep that in mind. I know it's very tricky. If you got questions, you can always reach out and ask us. So prior to the conclusion of any enrollment meeting, these are the things that are going to happen. You're going to do an overview of the services that trade provides. You're going to remind that person of the deadlines they must meet. You're going to ask them, which trade services do they, think they want to pursue? You're going to give them, we've heard it's called a career training research packet. You may call it something different in your area, but generally kind of the things that would be included would be some training provider research information, program research, trade training forms, some LMI information, job search forms, or any information on websites. It's kind of up to you in your local area. Most local areas, I believe, have something similar to some sort of a training research packet that they have the participant fill out, like what are your interests, what kind of research have you done? And then any additional documentation required to continue to complete the enrollment process. You're going to let them know what else do they need to provide you. Now we're going to get into the liable and agent state. This is covered under 20 CFR 618-824. The liable state is the state whose state UI law is the applicable state law. So whoever is paying the UI for that participant or to that participant, that is the liable state. And you have a liable agent state situation when you have someone like Dana suggested earlier, someone who was working in Indiana. Indiana is responsible for it's a Indiana certification. So Indiana is responsible for paying the UI for that participant. The participant lives in Illinois, so they're seeking services with the local area in Illinois. So in that situation, Indiana's the liable state and Illinois is the agent state. So we'll use that as our example. So an agent state is a state other than the liable state that provides the benefits or services to a participant. Most of the time, one state serves as both the liable and agent. So when you're serving your participants, they're coming in, they've been laid off from an Illinois certification, they're seeking services in Illinois. We are acting as both states, and that's fine. We can do that. That's the preferred method if we can do it that way at all possible. But it may not be possible in some. So the liable state is the one that is responsible for providing the general program information and provision of appropriate career services. Some of their activities for the liable state include, they're going to obtain the affected worker list. They're going to do the publications in the newspaper of those, the required notices that they have to do. They should conduct the outreach to those affected workers. They should provide the trade rapid response to the affected workers, and they must provide a list of the trade and alternative reemployment trade adjustment assistance, which is ATAA or RTAA participants, to the Internal Revenue Service for the healthcare tax credit purposes. So that's some of the liable state activities. The liable state is also responsible for making all determinations, redeterminations, and decisions on appeals on all claims for program benefits, such as trade eligibility, UI TRA benefits, and that includes extenuating circumstances, any waivers, issuances, extensions, criteria changes, revocations, training approvals, extensions, revisions, and cessations, transportation subsistence assistance. They are responsible for doing determinations for approvals and revisions, job search relo, approvals and reconciliations, ATAA, RTA benefits, approvals, revisions, and payments. So liable state is responsible for the determinations and all of that. So we have to have their approval for all of it before we as the agent state can do anything. So as the liable state, the career planners in Illinois have the following responsibilities. They must ensure that an EBS event is set up and updated to include any workers from the agent state. Remember, liable state is the one paying the UI. Illinois career planner will contact the agent state trade coordinator or career planner to discuss their preferred method of contact for communication of approvals, any required forms, monthly contact, and notification of any issues that can affect the participant's status or payment of benefits. The liable state career planner is going to ensure that trade rapid response workshops occur that include any out-of-state workers if that's possible. The workshop should include representatives from the agent state, any other appropriate OWIAs that might be serving those participants from the certification, or any partner agencies that need to be involved. And during that trade rapid response workshop, they're going to inform the participant of his or her responsibility of securing that eligibility for trade and TRA benefits and applicable deadlines. Some of the things that they're going to specifically inform the participant of are that they must file a UI TRA claim with IDES to secure their eligibility for the benefits. They're going to ensure the participant understands that he or she must work and cooperate with both states to receive those trade benefits and services. And like we said, this liable state determines eligibility for all benefits and services, and any approval must be in writing to the agent state prior to the start of services. So that liable state has to give that approval in writing to the agent state before any services can begin. Illinois state merit staff approval is also required. So you're going to enter a person if you're an agent state of someone. So like Dana, in your situation, you're going to enter anything just like you were acting as the liable or agent state. Everything's going to be the same in IWDS. You're going to enter all of the data. So you're going to make all those related entries in IWDS. You're going to seek state merit staff approval, just like always. So it works the same way, whether we're liable or agent or both. The career planner must check the appropriate boxes on that TAA additional info screen in IWDS to indicate if that participant is agent liable. So remember it said who's paying the UI, who's responsible for, is it an Illinois certification, is it not? So if we're an agent state, so Dana, this is what you are in the situation that you have where the participant is in, they live in Illinois, they're being served in Illinois, but it's a UI claim in Indiana and a UI, a certification from Indiana. So you are the agent state. So we as the agent state are responsible for cooperating fully with the liable state, Indiana in this case. We are going to obtain pre-approval from that liable state before any benefits or services are provided to that participant. So you're going to work with that career planner in Indiana to get these pre-approvals. You're going to communicate with that liable state to ensure proper payment of benefits. You're going to provide information needed to issue any determinations, redetermination decisions on benefits, services, or appeals with that liable state. And as the agent state, the career planner in Illinois have the following responsibilities. So if they're going to contact and confirm with the liable state, the participant meets all trade and WIOA eligibility requirements. You're going to make contact with that liable state career planner to discuss your preferred method of communication for the approvals, required forms, monthly contact, notification of any issues that may affect the participant's status and payment of benefits. Confirm with the liable state that the participant received trade rapid response. If not, then the Illinois career planner will provide that trade rapid response. An EBS event is not required when Illinois is the agent state, because of that requirement for trade rapid response is the responsibility of the liable state. However, if the LE is serving multiple participants from the same out-of-state certification, you may want to set up a local EBS event to track the participants. Now, I don't know exactly how that's going to work as far as autofilling on IWDS for that TAA additional info screen. If Levi's on here, he may be able to answer that question in the chat for us, because I know that screen autofills. I don't know if there's there might be an option to complete it if the information doesn't come from EBS. But if not, then we will get that answer for you and let you know how to handle that. So the agent state is also going to ensure that the participant understands that they must work and cooperate with both the states to receive their trade benefits and services. You're going to request any trade paperwork from the liable state. And if the paperwork does not include the required information to register the participant in IWDS, work with that participant in the liable state to obtain that additional information that's needed. You're going to obtain pre-approval in writing from the liable state prior to the start of benefit or service, and then you're going to enter all that information in IWDS just like you would any other participant, and you're going to ask for state merit staff approval for that, and you'll have to upload those other liable state documents that for us to review. If they've completed an IEP and it has the required components, that's fine. We don't have to do, an complete IEP. So you're going to have to work with the liable state to see what they have, what they require, and then there may be additional requirements from us from when state merit staff review it. You're going to check those appropriate boxes on that TAA additional info screen as appropriate, based on who's doing the UI. And this chapter 4 is the trade, liable, and agent state responsibilities chapter from our draft policy at this point. We don't have this finalized completely yet. We don't have our approval from DOL, but I just wanted to note that this is the chapter where you will find information on liable and agent state. And if you do have any questions on agent liable state, you can ask us, for assistance whenever you need it. If you do run across that situation. So Dana, if you have any questions on with that person you're working with, let us know. Just know that you need to work with that liable state career planner to ensure you have all the documents that are necessary to do what you need on your side. And you need that pre-approval and all the authorizations from them before we can approve it on our side. Okay. So I know we've covered this a couple of times. We want to keep reiterating these 2021 R program differences because you've got to keep these in mind as you're working through with people as they come in and when we start getting these 98,000 plus certifications. So the certifications under 2021 R only cover the listed workers. They do not automatically include any on-site leased workers or temporary agency workers. So keep that in mind as well when you're working with that. It is for manufacturing sector workers only. So it won't be, there won't be no service sector workers on these petitions. The enrollment deadlines are much shorter. It's the 8th week after the certification and the 16th week after the total qualifying separation. I see a typo. I'll have to fix that. And for 2021R, they must submit a trade form number 4, the 2021R trade bona fide application for training within 210 days of the latter of the date of certification or the date of their separation. And we always recommend that you do that application at the same time as the BRO, since you have them right there. And then you know, as long as that is within that 210 days, then they've got that eligibility established for that additional TRA with that application. The 45 days in equitable tolling, as we discussed, are the only extenuating circumstances that are available to extend the enrollment deadlines if they're necessary. The ATAA program is specific to 2021R. It works very similar to RTAA. It's a wage subsidy. They do have to be re-employed within a certain time frame in order to be eligible for this. So just keep in mind that ATAA is only specific to 2021R. And with ATAA in 2021R, there's no OJT or any other kind of training that you cannot combine training with ATAA in 2021R. And they are not eligible to access benefits prior to separation. Under other trade programs, they can access benefits and services if they are considered a threatened worker, but not under 2021R. The military service exceptions to deadlines, training duration, et cetera, are removed. So, you know, if you've got a military service personnel, they start training and then they get deployed. You know, under other trade programs, their deadline, you know, they can get that break in between while they're serving, and then they can come back and complete that. But those exceptions are removed under this 2021R. And trade case management funds cannot be provided to the OES to fund those trade case management services. That's why you have to do the career planning case management episodes on the WIOA application, just like we were doing prior to the new trade final rule last year. And part-time training under 2021R is allowable, and the person can be eligible for TRA payments. That eligibility and determination will be made by IDES as to whether that meets the requirements. And work-based training is the preferred method of training. So if you have a participant who is being served under a 98,000 plus petition, you will have to put information in your 6 criteria case note that shows what kind of work-based learning opportunities were researched. And if a work-based learning opportunity is not selected as a training program, a justification for why you didn't select that will need to be included. Again, here's where you can find the forms. You can find them a couple places. In the e-policy on Illinois WorkNet, Chapter 11, Section 1. There's a link over here on policy references. And there's the site for the WorkNet or e-policy. Always check WorkNet site for the most recent forms. Like I said, the IEP we should be able to have out there later today. We'll send an email out when we have that posted out there and it's available for use. Any correspondence, again, any emails regarding trade participants to State Merit staff, always include Susan, myself, and Lori Graham. And when we respond back, when you may respond back, always reply to all. Don't just hit reply, reply to all, so all of us get all of the information and we can keep everything related to that trade participant in one email chain. So we have to keep it all together, because then that we have a document of what's happened, what's occurred, so we can go back and look at it if we need to later, or if additional information is needed. And one of us may be involved in a meeting at some point and you need an answer right away, or, you know, we might have left for the day or something like that. You know, what the other ones can respond to your question if we all get it. Any emails regarding trade grants should be sent to Crystal Bigelow. If she needs to include the state grant staff on anything, she will reach out to us and send that information to us if we're needed. Always include a clear subject line that includes not only your LWN name and number, the LWN number, the purpose of the email, and the participant name. A lot of people leave off the participant name or the LWN number. So please include this kind of a subject line. We've got to have it so it's easier for us to find if we need it later. And do not combine information in emails for multiple participants. You know, every email should be about one participant only. If you've got another question about another participant, do a new email. There's some helpful websites. Of course, there's trade forms, the ETA, DOL ETA site for the Trade Act, the IWDS, GSA for finding your per diem and transportation rates. Workforce GPS has a lot of great Trade 101 resources that you may want to look at. Here's your trade contacts. Lori and I have state issued cell phones, so we have our phone numbers available. Susan and Crystal, you know, they do not have state issued cell phones and they're fine with that. So email, but email is the best source to reach us at, because then we have a document of what kind of information we've provided. So if someone asks that same question later, we can pass that information along as well. Here's the IDES trade unit contacts. There's their trade unit phone number. If you need to reach out to them for anything. And our upcoming training, the invitations should have been sent out. If there's someone that you know of in your area that may or may not have gotten the invites, please forward them to them. We appreciate that, because we tried to get everybody that we knew, but we have so many new staff out in the field. So please, you know, pass that along to anybody you think needs to be a part of these trainings. We're putting them together and trying to hopefully get the information out to as many people in the field as possible that work with trade customers. So our upcoming trainings next week, we are covering waivers and the completion of the waiver form. We take a couple weeks off because we have a holiday on the 11th. Then we go to November 18th and we'll cover training. December 2nd, you know, because we have the Thanksgiving week. Then we'll cover attendance, benchmarks, breaks in training, and also IEP modifications and completion of the Form 6A biweekly attendance. December 9th, we'll cover the ATAA, RTAA, and we did get confirmation from IDES that we will have, hopefully, I believe it's Eric Hack is going to be presenting that day, the first part of the training. So if you got any questions about ATAA, RTAA, we have the experts coming on that day to present, and then we will present after that on job search allowance and relocation allowances. December 16th, we'll cover credential and measurable skills gains and exiting of participants. January 6th, we'll cover TAPR and GRS. And we will send out a special invite to the fiscal staff for this, just so they're more aware of it. I mean, everyone is welcome to attend. The program staff and case managers should be aware of this process. So please attend, even if you're not involved on the fiscal side, because you are very integral to the cost data and estimates and things that are necessary for the participant. And January 13th, we will cover appeals, fraud, overpayments, and monitoring. Here is the site where the training recordings, presentations, and all the other reference materials that we talk about are posted. I did go and look, and it got the first couple of weeks, the documents and the training resources and the videos are there. And if there's any additional training that's needed, please reach out to us and let us know, or if there's something specific that you want to see covered, you know, we can certainly do that after we complete all of these training sessions through January. or if there's any specific topic you think you want covered during one of these presentations that are upcoming, then let us know, or something, you know, a detailed thing about anything you want covered, let us know. Give us at least a couple weeks. So if there's anything specific you want covered on waivers, then reach out to me by tomorrow and we'll try to include that. Or if there's anything else that you need as far as training wise. So any questions from anybody that we have not answered? And we will, I finalized part of the chat from last week. We were working on finalizing that this morning. So we will get that posted hopefully later today.
I don't see any questions. Oh wait, a question just popped up in the chat. Under 2021R, since TAA services can't be provided until separation, we could enroll them in 1D, start them in training, and then pick up training costs in trade after their separation date.
Yes,
correct?
yes, that's correct. Yes, you can do that, Joel.
Okay.
They just can't access trade services until they're separated. Okay, so this might be overkill, but no, if no apprenticeship programs are available and no employers at the time who are able, willing to participate in OJT, and or the participant is not suitably inclined toward an occupation for which apprenticeships are available, does or will DOL expect case managers to provide additional specific documentation in the assessment or case note justifying, explaining why a work-based learning training was not selected for the applicant? You know, I mean, you can just spell it out. You can just say, you know, that there's no employers, you know, providing OJTs or apprenticeships at that time, you know, or the participant's just not suitable or something like that. I mean, just basically what you said, you can just put that, you know, that there weren't any available. We just have to show that we actually researched the opportunity for that participant. And, you know, if there's none available, I mean, we really can't do anything about that. You know, and it may not be something that the participant is interested in doing. You know, I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to do an apprenticeship in construction. I'm not qualified for it, for one. But you know, it wouldn't be something that I would be interested in. So yeah, you just have to research and just show what kind of research you did and just justify, well, this is why we didn't select this. You know, there's nothing in the area, or, you know, this person is not suited towards this. Just, that's all you have to provide. So, no more questions?
No, I don't see any more.
All right, well, I hope everyone learned something today. I hope these aren't too boring. And we will get the materials posted. We will get the transcript of the chat from Molly, and we will sort through it and put it in a format and make sure that all the questions were answered, and then we will have that posted as well. And I've got a couple of documents here. I'll get the transferable skills checklist posted as a part of the documents, and I will check with the powers that be to see if the Title 1B service matrix is available to be posted as well. So you guys can have that, because we referenced that. There are some documents that we are posting in addition to the other ones that I presented. One of them is, it's a PowerPoint presentation that the IT staff, Chris Tylen, created. It walks you through the application process for creating a co-enrolled WIOA trade client. It's a very good PowerPoint, and Levi just updated it to include the EBS information as well. You know, any new career planners out there, that's a great document. If you do run across anything when you're using that is different than what you're seeing on IWDS or something, let me know and we can update that. But that's a very good PowerPoint to walk you through completing an application. Like we said, the WIOA policy 5.9 basic skills deficiency assessment requirements, the Title I documentation sources, and there's also a document I'm putting out there that is from John Ferry over at the IDES office. It's it walks you through the IBIS system and how to navigate through that to get the TRA information for participants. So we don't have time to cover all of that stuff, but I did want to actually let you know that those are resources that we're putting out there for you. Feel free to use them. If you find anything that, you know, is different than what you're seeing, let us know. We can always see if those things can be updated. But, you know, if there's any other resources you can think of that you want, let us know. We'll try to get them and get them out there posted for you. Okay, and if that's it, then I guess we will see you next week.
All right, have a good day,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.